Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, inshallah, we are going to take some exercises, some practical exercises related to Chapter 4 and Chapter 5 before completing the Chapter 5, right? So in order to make sure that everything is clear, everything is going fine. So let's take the following exercises in order to make it easy to understand the course. As you see in this example or this exercise, if the consumption function C equals 100 plus 0.8y and I equals 50, the question is, the equilibrium level of income is how much? As you know that when if there is no government, the equilibrium occurs when Y equals aggregate expenditure, right? The aggregate output equals the aggregate expenditure. And if we don't have a government, the aggregate expenditure equals how much? C plus I, right? So at equilibrium, Y equals C plus I, or Y equals C, direct substitution, 100 plus 0.8Y plus the planned investment, 50, right? So what do you see? Y minus 0.8y equals 100 plus 50, 150. So y 1y minus 0.8y equals 0.2y equals 150. So y equals how much? 150 over 0.2, or equals how much? 750. This is the value of the aggregate equilibrium or the equilibrium level of income, right? What about the consumption in this case? How much is the consumption? Exactly. Yes. Aggregate expenditure equals C plus I. The aggregate income equals C plus S, right? So, as we mentioned that at equilibrium, the aggregate income equals aggregate expenditure, right? Or the aggregate output equals the aggregate expenditure. But calculate the value of consumption or the aggregate consumption at equilibrium. So C equals how much? Direct substitution. Okay. So to derive or to calculate C, the consumption, C equals what? 100 plus 0.8y. So C equals 100 plus 0.8 times 750. This is the equilibrium consumption, or the value of consumption at equilibrium. So C equals 100 plus 0.8 times 750. How much? قديش هذا ضربوه على الآلة؟ واحد كويكلي هيك على الآلة يعني. Okay, plus 500. So C equals $600 million, right? What about the value of saving? Saving equals Y minus C, right? So okay, this is 600. Okay, 600. So it should be 700, right? What about the saving, the aggregate saving? Saving equals Y minus C when there is no government. So the S saving equals Y minus C. So saving equals Y at equilibrium equals how much? 750 minus the consumption 700. In this case, saving equals 50. This is the value of aggregate saving at equilibrium, right? Okay? Is there a problem? طيب. The second example or exercise. As you see, the consumption function equals 1,500 plus 0.75y and I equals $500 million. Then the question is, the planned saving equals the planned investment at an aggregate output level of how much? This question, the question is, the planned saving equals the planned investment at y equals how much? This is the question. When S equals I, this is the equilibrium, or the equilibrium occurs when saving equals aggregate investment, or the planned investment. صح؟ مظبوط ولا لا؟ Where when y equals aggregate expenditure, شو الوضع؟ C plus S equals C plus I. So deduction of C, so S equals I at equilibrium. So the same. We have to do the same to derive the equilibrium aggregate output. The equilibrium aggregate output in this case equals C plus I. The same. So in this case, أمسح هذا. Okay. So C equals 1,500 plus 0.75 Y, and I equals how much? $500 million. The question is, calculate the aggregate income or the equilibrium aggregate output when saving equals investment, or S equals I, or at equilibrium. So Y equals C plus I at equilibrium. So Y equals 1,500 plus 0.75 Y plus the planned investment, $500 million. So Y equals 2,000 plus 0.75 Y. So shifting, Y minus 0.75 equals Y equals 2,000. So 25 Y equals 2,000. So Y equals $8,000 million. That's it. So at equilibrium, the aggregate output equals $8,000 million. How much is the consumption in this case? Direct substitution in the consumption function. صح? So to derive or to calculate the aggregate consumption, C equals how much? C equals 1,500 plus 0.75 times Y. Y, $8,000 million. So C equals 1,500 plus how much the times? Are you sure? Okay, $6,000 million. So C equals $7,500 million. So to derive or to calculate the saving in this case, saving equals Y minus C. So S equals Y equals how much? The aggregate 8,000 minus 7,500 equals 500. This is the planned saving, or the aggregate planned saving, or the planned aggregate saving. Right? Is it clear? Okay. Yes, the same idea, the same process. So let's go to this figure or this diagram. As you see, this is the aggregate expenditure function. Aggregate expenditure function equals C plus I, and this is Y. The equilibrium occurs when Y equals aggregate expenditure. This is aggregate expenditure line, and this is Y. The equilibrium, as you see, occurs when Y equals intersect aggregate expenditure function E. So how much is the equilibrium income or the equilibrium aggregate output? $200 million or $200, right? Type. The question is, derive the aggregate expenditure function. Derive the aggregate expenditure function. As you know, that the aggregate expenditure function includes the autonomous aggregate expenditure plus the slope of the function times Y. صح؟ هيو. The autonomous aggregate expenditure equals how much? 150, right? And we have to calculate the slope of aggregate expenditure function. صح? So equals how much? We have to draw a triangle. This distance over this distance to calculate the marginal propensity to consume. صح؟ So equals how much? 200 minus 150 over 200. This is the marginal propensity to consume. صح? So aggregate expenditure function in this case equals the autonomous aggregate expenditure, which equals 150 plus the MBC times Y. صح? MBC equals how much? MBC in this case equals 200, the slope, the slope of aggregate expenditure function. 200 minus 150 over 200 minus 0. So equals 0 point, how much? Okay. 50 exactly, yes. Why? So this is the aggregate expenditure function, right? طيب. At equilibrium, calculate the value of aggregate income. At equilibrium, mathematically, احسبوا لنا ال Y والconsumption. No, we don't want. Okay, بلاش نحكي في الconsumption بس في ال Y. At equilibrium, Y equals aggregate expenditure at equilibrium. So Y, substitution, Y equals 150 plus 0.25 Y. So shifting, not shifting here. So Y minus 0.25 Y equals 150, right? So 0.75 Y equals 150. So Y equals how much? 200 exactly. It should be 200 because the equilibrium is 200, as you see, right? طيب. What else? Calculate the investment multiplier or the value of investment multiplier. The question is, calculate the investment multiplier. The investment multiplier equals how much? Or what is the formula of the investment multiplier? بدي أمسحه. Okay. 1 over. So the question is, calculate the investment multiplier. Investment multiplier, which is delta Y over delta I, equals 1 over 1 minus MBC. MBC is known. MBC equals how much? This is the investment multiplier. So the investment multiplier equals 1 over 1 minus the MBC is already calculated. 0.25 equals 1 over 0.75 equals how much? واحد تقسيم. خلي الآلة شباب جاهزة. أعطينا 1.33. This means if the investment or the planned investment increased by $1 million, the aggregate output or the aggregate income would increase by $1.333 million, right? Okay? طيب. Suppose that the planned investment increased by $50 million. The question is, suppose that the planned investment increased by $50 million. How much is the value of or the change in aggregate output or the aggregate income? يعني suppose إنه aggregate investment increased by $50 million, right? This is delta I. So delta I equals positive $50 million, right? The question is calculate the change in aggregate output and determine the new aggregate output on the formula or on the figure. The same, yes. So as you know that delta Y over delta I equals 1 over MBS or 1 minus MBC. So delta Y is unknown over delta I positive 50. Now, because sometimes it will be negative. If there is a decreasing in the planned investment, it should be negative. So equals or should be minus 1 over the MPS 0.75. ضرب تبادلي. So delta Y times 0.75 or 0.75 times delta Y equals 1 times 50 equals 50. So delta y equals 50 over 0.75 equals how much? Sorry? 66.6. This is what? The change in aggregate income or aggregate output. So how much is the value of a new equilibrium output on the figure here? إذن هذا زاد equilibrium when كان equilibrium? And 200. We have additional increasing by 66.6. So the new equilibrium should be here. 266.6. This is the new equilibrium. So we expect that the new equilibrium would be at this point. So we have a full shifting or upward shifting of the aggregate expenditure function. So this is aggregate expenditure 2, C plus I plus delta I. Right? And this is the new equilibrium output or income. Yes, exactly. 66.6 is the increasing of aggregate income or the increasing of aggregate output. Right? في مشكلة؟ مين عنده مشكلة؟ طب مين أعيد له؟ تمام. The value of multiplier change equilibrium expert. Okay, let's take the following. As you see, we have the following information. MBC equals 0.70 or 25. This is the MBC, right? And delta I equals positive 50, right? Now suppose that the change in investment remains constant. Yani we have increasing in the investment by $50 million. And MBC increased. MBC increased to 0.30. How much is the change in aggregate output or the aggregate income? So what do you see? Here we have, our assumption is, we have an increasing in the marginal propensity to consume MBC increased by 0.30, right? And the planned investment increased by the same amount, 50. Calculate the change in the aggregate income. The same idea. So delta Y over delta I equals 1 over MBS. So delta Y over delta I 50 equals 1 over 0.70. صح? So delta Y equals 50 over 0.70 equals how much? Sorry? Okay, 71.4. This is what? The change in the aggregate output, right? So the increasing, as you see, the increasing of the value of MBC, the marginal propensity to consume, leads to what? Increasing the value or the change in the aggregate income or the aggregate output. صح؟ في المرة الأولى when MBC, and the previous case, when the MBC equals 0.25, how much is the increasing in the aggregate output? 66.6, right? But now, the increasing of MBC leads to increasing the aggregate output, right? The same. 1 minus MBC equals MBS. The same. Because here, as you see, with direct substitution, yes. No. In the previous, yes. In the previous, when MBC was 0.25, MBS 0.75. Now, when MBC equals 0.30, MBS equals 0.70. That's it. Okay? لا. Okay. MBC, aggregate equilibrium. Okay, let's go to this example. The question is, assume there is no government or foreign sector. So we don't have a government and we work under the closed economy. If the multiplier is or equals 10. Yes. Okay. The multiplier equals 10, right? A 10 billion increase in the planned investment will cause aggregate output to increase by how much? This is the question. So our assumption that the multiplier equals 10, right? And we have increasing delta I equals by how much? $10 billion. The question is, calculate the change in the aggregate output or the aggregate income. So, as you know that the multiplier delta Y over delta I or equals 1 over MBS. Here we are doing a comparison between what? The multiplier is available, delta I is given, delta Y is given, so we have to neglect this part. صح? Or to ignore this part. So multiplier 10 equals delta Y over 10. So delta Y equals positive. This is positive, 100. So we expect that the aggregate output would increase by $100 billion. Right? Yes, Rabia. The multiplier equals 1 over 1 minus MBC. So 1 minus MBC is MPS. Yes, it depends. Yes, exactly. طيب. In this exercise, what do you see? We don't have a government and we don't have a foreign sector. If the MBS equals 0.2, MBS 0.2, right? A 40 billion decrease in the planned investment will cause the aggregate output to decrease by how much? So in this case, MBC equals 0.2 and we have a decreasing in the planned investment. So delta I equals minus how much? 40. Calculate the change in aggregate output. As you know that delta Y over delta I equals 1 over MBS or 1 minus MBC, right? So delta Y over minus, because we have a decreasing, so minus 40 equals 1 over 0.2, right? So delta Y times 0. So delta Y equals minus 40 over 0.2, so equals minus 200. So, sorry? No, to decrease by, yes. So we expect that we have a decrease in the aggregate output by $200 billion. Sorry? جايين للgovernment. No, we are not talking about the government. The government is, we don't have a government here, right? Okay, let's go to take some exercises to chapter 5 when we add the government and the aggregate expenditure, right? As you see in this example, Pell's income is $1,000 and his net taxes are $350. His disposable income equals how much? The disposable income, YD, equals Y minus T. So YD equals Y 1,000 minus 350 equals 650. That's it. right? This is the first. بلاش يجي زيه، بده يجي أصعب، بس أعلمك الأصعب أنا إن شاء الله. Yes, exactly. طيب, in this example, in 2007, the city of Campfield collected 500,000 in taxes. So the taxes, T, equals $500,000 million or dollars, and they spent for 150. في عندنا deficit. Is there a deficit or surplus? G, government spending equals $450,000. So we have a deficit or shortage. We have a deficit because the taxes, surplus, because the taxes gained or received is larger than the government spending. So we have a surplus by how much? The difference between G and T. صح؟ مين أكبر، الإنفاق ولا الضريبة اللي جمعناها؟ مجمعين ضريبة، إذن في عندنا we have a surplus by $50,000. Okay, let's go to this example or exercise. As you see, the aggregate consumption function is C equals 100 plus 0.6 YD. What else? The income Y equals 1,000 and Y equals $1,000. And the net taxes T equals $300. The consumption equals how much? Exactly. Or we can use the formula C equals 100 plus 0.6 YD. YD equals Y minus T. Substitution. YD equals Y minus T. So,
BY minus BT.
Yes, exactly. So C equals 100 plus 0.6 times Y minus the taxes, 300. Right? So what do you see? So C equals 100. So Y is given, exactly, yes. Y is given $1,000. So C equals 100 plus 0.6 times 700. So C equals 100 plus 420. So C equals 520. Right? Is it clear? طيب. How much is the saving? Exactly. As you know, if we have a government, if there is a government, Y equals C plus S plus T, because part of your income goes for the taxes. So to calculate saving in this case, saving equals Y minus T minus C, or YD minus C. So CS, saving equals YD minus T minus C, or Y minus T minus C. That's it. So S equals Y equals how much? 1,000 minus T, taxes 300, minus C 520. صح? 520 equals how much? 130. 80? Okay. 180. That's it. So this is the saving when we have a government. So the saving, if we have a government, the saving equals Y minus C minus T. صح? Okay.
We can use the saving function.
Exactly, yes. But here it should be related to YD. Exactly. So the saving in this case equals A plus B times YD, not Y. Or minus A plus, plus 1 minus B. Yes, MBS times YD. So in this case, thank you. if we use or would like to use the saving function when we have a government, or the consumption function when we have a government equals 100 plus 0.6 YD. So the saving function equals what? Minus 100 plus 40 YD. صح? The same. So let's go to another exercise or example. Here we have the aggregate consumption function C equals 100 plus 0.8 YD, and income 600, net taxes equals 0. So Y equals the same idea, the same process. بس YD, sorry, taxes equals 0 in this case. So Y must equal YD. صح؟ طيب. So let's go to this example. In this example, this is Y, aggregate income. This is C, T, taxes, net taxes, investment, and the government spending. The question is, number one, calculate the aggregate expenditure. Aggregate expenditure in this case equals C plus I plus G, right? So, for the first case, C plus I plus G. So suppose here we are going to calculate the aggregate expenditure. Aggregate expenditure equals C plus I plus G. For the first case, 400 plus 200 plus 100 equals how much? 700. And then 700 plus 200 plus 100, 1000. Right? The third case, 1000 plus 200, 1030 exactly. 1300, and then 1600. No, 600. 1600. And the last case, exactly, 1900. Right? Number two, calculate or determine the equilibrium income. The equilibrium income occurs when Y equals aggregate expenditure. صح? So, number two, determine the equilibrium income. So, the equilibrium occurs when Y equals aggregate expenditure. Where is the case where Y equals aggregate expenditure? Exactly, at 1600. So the equilibrium occurs when Y equals 1600 and aggregate expenditure equals the same. So the equilibrium aggregate income or aggregate output is 1600, right? Okay. Suppose or at Y equals 1200. Is there a positive unplanned inventory change or negative? By how much? Why? So let's write the question. So at Y equals 1200, is there a negative or positive a change in business inventory or inventory change? Yes. It's the value of the unplanned inventory change equals Y minus aggregate expenditure. So at this point, Y equals 1200 minus the aggregate expenditure, in this case 1300, so equals minus 100. So in this case, the unplanned inventory change is minus or would decrease or decline by 100, right? Type. At Y equals 800, is there a tendency for the output to increase or to decrease? By how much? Exactly, by 800, not صح? So the question is, suppose at Y equals $400 billion or dollars. Is there a tendency for Y to increase or to decrease to reach the equilibrium? عشان نوصل للتوازن عند 1600. Y would, or the aggregate income or aggregate output must increase by how much? 1,000 to reach the 1,000, but by how much? 1600 ناقص 400 by 1,200 صح؟ طيب at 2,000 or when Y equals $2,000 million. Exactly, the Y, the aggregate output must decline by 400 to reach the equilibrium. صح؟ No. من 2000 ل 1600 400 to reach the equilibrium. صح؟ Okay. Or at the aggregate output level of $800 million, a billion, the disposable income equals what? How much? Y minus T. صح؟ هيو at 800 قديش disposable income اللي هو ال YD equals Y minus T. So at 8 here, at 8 Y equals 800. How much is the disposable income? Disposable income is YD equals Y minus T. 800 minus 100 equals 700. This is the disposable income. But how much is the saving in this case? Saving equals Y minus C minus T. صح? So suppose the question is at Y equals 2,000. How much is the saving? So at Y equals 2,000 billion dollars. How much is the saving? Saving equals Y minus C minus T. So S equals Y 2,000 minus the consumption in this case equals how much? 1,600 minus T. T equals 100. So the saving equals how much? 300. This is the saving at Y, or when Y equals $2,000 million. Right? صعب الأمور. طيب. Let's go. The value of. Okay. At equilibrium level. At the equilibrium level of income, leakages equals how much? Leakages equals how much? عند aggregate income or عند التوازن, leakages equals how much? As you know that the leakages equals S plus T. صح? At equilibrium, the leakages اللي هو S plus T. صح؟ والinjections ايش؟ I plus G. مظبوط؟ صح؟ So at equilibrium, equilibrium عند 1600 S plus T equals قديش؟ Tax equals 100. صح؟ قديش السيفنج؟ We have to calculate saving. Saving at equilibrium S equals Y minus C minus T. صح؟ So saving equals Y is 1,600 minus C 1,300 minus 100. So the saving equals how much? 200. Right? This is the S. So the leakages equals S plus T, or equals S 200 plus taxes 100. So equals $300 billion. صح؟ طيب قديش الانجكشنز؟ ايه الحليب؟ I plus G. So at equilibrium, طبعا at equilibrium, leakages must equal injections. Exactly. So I 200 plus G 100. So at equilibrium, leakages equals injection. صح؟ Injections. صح? So the injection is I plus G equals 200 plus 100. Right? Okay. Let's go to this exercise. as you see, C equals, or the Italian economy can be characterized by the equation C equals 300. C equals 300 plus 0.8 YD, right? And the government spending equals G equals $400 billion. T, taxes, $200 billion. And the planned investment equals 200. The question is, number one, the equilibrium level of output for the Italian economy is how much? So we have to calculate the equilibrium level of aggregate output. At equilibrium, as you know, Y equals aggregate expenditure. So Y equals C plus I plus G, right? So Y equals C 300 plus 0.8 YD plus I 200 plus G 400, right? So Y equals 300 plus 0.8 times YD is Y minus T, صح? So Y minus T is given, the net tax is given. So equals 200 plus 200 plus 400, صح? So Y equals, بدنا نجمع اللي زي بعض. 300 plus 200 plus 400 equals how much? 900 plus, هذا بدنا ندخله ظروف القوس. So 0.8 Y minus 0.8 times 200, 160. صح؟ مظبوط؟ So اعمل shifting هيك. Y minus 0.8 Y equals 900 minus 160 equals how much? 740. So this is 1. 0.2 Y equals 740. So how much is Y? So Y equals 740 over 0.2, صح? So Y equals how much? That's it. B, the answer is B, right? How much is the consumption in this case? Because that direct substitution. So C, yes. أمسح هذا? Okay. So calculate the consumption, the aggregate consumption in this case. C equals 300 plus 0.8 times YD. So C equals 300 plus 0.8 times Y at equilibrium equals how much? 3,700 minus T. T equals how much? 200. So C equals 300 plus 0.8 times 3,700 minus 200, 3,500. So C equals 300 plus how much? The 0.8 times, اعملهم على الآلة شوفوا. How much? Okay, 2,800. So C equals $3,100 billion. So as you see here, the consumption equals how much? 3,100. So the answer is A, right? يعطيكم العافية.